After 10 long years of siege warfare, the Greek army finally breached the walls of Troy and burnt it to the ground. King Odysseus, the architect of that victory, packs his men into 12 ships and sets sail for a short, triumphant voyage home to his wife and son. But the journey goes immediately wrong. It takes another 10 years. Moments after leaving Troy, the crew raids a coastal settlement. Odysseus orders a quick retreat, but his men ignore him, staying behind to feast. Reinforcements arrive, and several Greeks are slaughtered before the ships can escape. A storm then blows the remaining fleet to the land of the Lotus-Eaters. The inhabitants offer the crew a sweet fruit that causes them to completely forget their homes, their families, and their pasts. This encounter introduces the deepest conflict of the journey. The men aren't killed or tortured. They simply stop caring. Odysseus faces physical death on the open ocean, but the far greater threat is psychological erasure, losing his own identity and the will to return to his family. We see Odysseus's legendary intellect when his men are trapped in a cave by Polyphemus, a massive, man-eating Cyclops. Odysseus blinds the monster while it sleeps, and the following morning he successfully smuggles his men out by tying them to the undersides of the giant's sheep. It is a brilliant escape. But as the ship rows away to safety, Odysseus commits a massive failure of restraint. He wants the monster to know exactly who bested him. He stands on the deck and screams his real name across the water. That single boast gives Polyphemus the information he needs to pray to his father, the sea god Poseidon. The god answers by placing a devastating curse on the rest of the voyage, turning the ocean itself into an active enemy. The tragedy compounds when the crew acquires a magical bag containing all the hostile winds of the sea. After days of smooth sailing, the shores of Ithaca actually appear on the horizon. Exhausted, Odysseus falls asleep. His men, convinced the bag is full of secret treasure, tear it open. The violent winds explode outward, blowing the ship entirely off course. Odysseus possesses brilliant tactical instincts, but his own arrogance and his crew's total lack of discipline constantly sabotage them. Every time they secure an advantage, their flaws actively push their home further out of reach. The voyage turns darker. Giant cannibals destroy 11 of the 12 ships, and the lone surviving vessel lands on the island of the enchantress Circe. She invites the men into her palace, drugs them, and physically turns them into pigs, literally stripping away their human forms. With divine help, Odysseus forces Circe to restore his crew. But she tells him the only way to find his route home is to sail to the edge of the world, perform a blood ritual, and consult the dead. In the underworld, Odysseus discovers the spirit of his mother. She died of grief waiting for his return. Desperate, he tries to embrace her, but his physical hand passes right through her shadow. He also encounters fallen kings and warriors from Troy, like the great Achilles. These heroes traded long lives for eternal glory, and their ghosts regret the bargain. They admit that their legendary military status offers no comfort in death. Surviving a brutal war offers a hollow victory if you return with empty hands. The underworld forces Odysseus to realize that maintaining his connection to his living family is the only prize that actually matters. To navigate the physical dangers ahead, Odysseus has to recognize his own limitations. When passing the Sirens, creatures whose song lure sailors to their deaths, he orders his men to plug their ears and tie him tightly to the mast. He survives by anticipating his own weakness and creating restraints before the temptation even arrives. This tactical map illustrates the most brutal choice of the voyage, a narrow sea strait. On the left is Charybdis, a massive whirlpool. On the right is Scylla, a beast with 6 heads. To avoid the whirlpool that would swallow the entire ship, Odysseus deliberately steers towards Scylla. He actively chooses to sacrifice 6 of his own men to save the rest from total destruction. Cleverness cannot save everyone. The remaining crew eventually lands on an island and slaughters the sacred cattle of the sun god. Divine retribution is swift. A lightning strike shatters the ship, drowning everyone aboard except Odysseus. He drifts on the wreckage entirely alone. He washes ashore on the island of the nymph Calypso. She falls in love with him, offering eternal youth and a life free of pain. He spends 7 years as her prisoner. And every day he walks down to the rocky beach to weep, choosing to stare at the sea. He rejects immortality. His ultimate triumph at sea takes place entirely in his mind. He refuses to let a flawless, immortal paradise erase his memory of a flawed, mortal home. Meanwhile, Ithaca has descended into chaos. Over 100 arrogant suitors occupy a palace, consuming Odysseus's wealth and pressuring his wife, Penelope, to choose a new husband. She stalls them by weaving a burial shroud during the day and secretly unraveling it every single night. When Odysseus finally reaches his shores, the goddess Athena disguises him as an elderly beggar. He cannot rush the palace. He must employ the absolute restraint he lacked when fighting the Cyclops 20 years ago. He walks into his own dining hall and endures relentless insults and physical abuse from the men trying to steal his life. Through it all, he maintains his cover. The only creature to recognize him is his neglected hunting dog, Argos, who looks at his old master one last time before passing away. Surviving the ocean required physical endurance. Surviving the return requires Odysseus to master his own ego, hiding his true identity until the exact right moment to strike. Penelope announces a final, impossible contest. She will marry the man who can string Odysseus's incredibly stiff hunting bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through a row of 12 axe heads. The suitors step up. Every single one of them fails to even bend the wood. The disguised beggar asks for a chance. He takes the weapon, effortlessly strings it, and makes the perfect shot. The disguise drops. The palace doors are locked from the outside. Fighting alongside his son Telemachus, Odysseus unleashes 20 years of delayed vengeance, defeating the men who ravaged his home. The fighting ends, but Penelope remains cautious. The gods play tricks on mortals. To prove he is truly her husband, she orders a servant to move their heavy marriage bed out of the chamber. Odysseus reacts with sudden shock. This cross-section diagram reveals the secret construction of their chamber. He built the frame directly into a living olive tree. Because of deep roots extending beneath the stone floor, the foundation of their marriage literally cannot be moved. Only the true king of Ithaca could know this. Penelope embraces her husband. The Odyssey is a catalogue of monsters and shipwrecks, but at its core it is a story about a man whose identity remained immovable. He survived 20 years of a world doing everything in its power to make him forget where he belonged.